Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is an innovative weekly web series capturing the diverse and colorful lifestyle of Alaskans. Real stories of everyday Alaskans at work and play. Supported in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company.
Cook Inlet Tug and Barge is a marine transportation company specializing in harbor services with a primary marketing focus on the Port of Anchorage, providing their customers with quality-based service specifically tailored to their needs.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. On the warning advisory map, there's a winter weather advisory out for mostly St. Lawrence Island and possibly areas from Tin City to Teller. That's out for tomorrow. Look for winds to increase from the east-northeast up to 45 miles an hour. That'll lower visibilities in snow and blowing snow at that time. Otherwise, looking at the far western GMS loop, you can see storminess here entering the western Aleutians and southwest Bering Sea. Brought some pretty good snowfall today, down to 3/4 of a mile at Shimya, and snow with brisk northwest wind or brisk northeasterlies, 15 to 35, some cases gusts as high as 50 miles per hour. That mixed over and changed to rain during the afternoon hours. Somewhat milder conditions finally moved into that area there. And back to the northwest, another impulse coming southward that could round and make a pretty good storm coming into south central Alaska Monday afternoon and evening. Otherwise, we have this front that brought the strong winds to the southwest coast yesterday, moving inland, and there was rain and snow over Bristol Bay. That was all snow, blowing snow here across the Yukon and Kuskokwim Delta areas, and then back up in towards St. Lawrence Island with some thickening mid and high level clouds trying to get into Cook Inlet. But it was a pretty nice day. You can see a lot of clearing from south central Alaska to Prince William Sound, back to the northwest there in toward the Kobuk and Koyukuk valleys. Really not too bad even out across Kotzebue Sound. Areas of snow showers with this cloudiness over the Wrangell Mountains extended up to kind of areas of light snow from Eagle northward to the Yukon Valley and actually extending all the way up to the Arctic coast. And a pretty good day here, Yakutat on down across the Panhandle, but showers moving westward around this big upper level trough here southwest of the Queen Charlottes. That brought some showers in close to the border, but just mainly the southern area seeing some variable cloudiness down in that area with more sun up to the north. And then the big storm, kind of hard to pick out here in the clouds, but this morning the front right about in that position. Southern front right through here. It looks like this will hold together enough as it comes in to bring some rain and snow into south central Alaska this evening, and that should change over to mostly just snow after midnight and continue into tomorrow morning, and that could bring anywhere from 1 inch to maybe 2 inches of snow to the higher elevations, again mostly across south central Alaska, and some of that moisture will rotate to the northern Kuskokwim Valley as well, but not much of anything up here. Just continue with the gusty winds, 15 to 30 miles an hour from the east-northeast along the entire stretch of the Arctic coast. In fact, brisk wind advisories are out for the next couple of days up there for all of the Arctic coast, eastern Beaufort Sea coastline. Could see gusts approaching 50 miles an hour on Monday, but a lot less of a gradient, if any at all, here over southern Alaska with the weak low here just east of Northway. Look for a few lingering rain and snow showers over the interior, depending on your elevation. Not too bad tonight and actually tomorrow as well for the Panhandle. Maybe a risk of a shower over the central areas, but these are pretty widely scattered, extending back to the North Gulf Coast, and then leftover moisture with this front making for mostly cloudy with maybe some rain and snow showers around the south central areas, the Sitna Valley, and staying pretty nice, mostly dry with possibly mostly sunny skies up here over the north central and northwest interior. And then here's the front pushing northward, bringing the winter weather advisory to St. Lawrence Island. Rain pushing in with this into Bristol Bay, a mixture here over the southwest interior. and then good northerly winds, northwesterlies, and the colder air coming down. Area of Genesis right here, going to watch come around the bottom of that low pressure area, and on Monday we'll swing northward, and that's the perfect setup for a strong wind situation, Chinook type winds here for south central Alaska if it should develop to this as this is shown. Pretty good gradient here, strong gusty winds, rain along the coast heavy at times, lesser amounts in the downslope areas, but pretty good moisture out here to the northwest. Areas of snow from the Seward Peninsula back around into St. Lawrence Island. That winter weather advisory may last through Monday there as well, and also look for the gradient to increase, as I mentioned earlier, on the western Arctic coast with brisk wind advisories out through Monday there for the entire stretch of the coastline, all the way over to Demarcation Point. Cold northwest winds coming around the back side of this system. Rain and snow showers, Alaska Peninsula, probably just changing over to snow showers by Monday evening. That extends back up into the Pribilofs, probably a little bit more in the way of snow there than there will be down across the Alaska Peninsula. And just a risk of a shower, variably cloudy here for the Panhandle, basically under high pressure, winds on the light and variable side, but there's still a risk of a shower from, say, Juneau to Elfin Cove over to about Yakutat, with the main rain area back here in advance of the warm front along the coast from Cordova over to Seward, Iliamna, Kamishak Bay. Look for some pretty good winds there as well, but kind of variable even into the afternoon for Cook Inlet, but turning an arm easterlies could be pretty brisk Monday afternoon, especially Monday evening. And temperatures today, mid-40s to near 50 degrees at Juneau, the warm spot in the state today, with upper 40s along the North Gulf Coast. 41, pretty common temperature at Kenai, Palmer, and at Valdez. 40 degrees Gulkana and Talkeetna. Northway with some sun pushed up to 31 degrees today, but only 28 there at Delta, 32 at Fairbanks. And with northeast winds 10 to 20 miles an hour, clouds and some snow, just 19 degrees at Fort Yukon, 3 degrees at Anatuvik. Same thing up at Barter Island and Barrow, -1, -4 at Point Lay. 3 degrees there at Point Hope, 8 at Buckland, 13 at Kotzebue. Seward Peninsula, temperatures range from 24 at Nome to just 3 above zero at Tin City, 25 there at Gamble. Otherwise, 20s here over the west and west central part of the state, 32 down at Bethel, upper 30s for the Pribilofs, and with the snow kind of bouncing back, freezing rain, snow and rain there for the western Aleutians at Shimia, 33 degrees, but much milder air here, mid-40s over the central Aleutians, and 43 from Unalaska, Cold Bay, and Sand Point. Looking at lows for tonight, 10 to 20 below for the North Slope and the Arctic coastal areas, with the 0-degree isotherm just about right along the Brooks Range, so south of there, single numbers and teens. 20-degree isotherm along the north coast of Norton Sound there from Teller over to White Mountain, and mid-20s, mid to upper 20s here over the southwest interior, Bristol Bay, 25 to 30 for the lows, milder out here over the Aleutians, 41 the forecast low for Unalaska, 30s south central Alaska, 30s for the southeast coast. And for the highs tomorrow, 45 to 50 again, some cases lower 50s down toward Craig and Klawock, 50 to 55 down in that area, with 40s, mid-40s here over south central Alaska, mid to upper 30s, Tanana Valley to 40-mile country, and below zero for the North Slope and the Arctic coast, but not all that far below zero. Some areas reaching above, like Kaktovik forecast at 2 above, same thing for Point Lay, upper teens to mid-20s for the northwest areas, and 30s to lower 40s here over the southwest coast, and lower 40s for the highs here for the central Aleutians. Flying weather. Leftover moisture with the first front, they'll be coming in tonight and tomorrow. So areas IFR along the North Gulf Coast, possibly the Wrangell Mountains, as well as western Prince William Sound there, and marginal VFR all along the Alaska Range. Not too bad up to the north, all the way to the Arctic coast. Could be some marginal stuff, but generally lower conditions forecast on the western Arctic coast, and then all the moisture rolling in with that next storminess, next frontal boundary coming in. A lot of IFR, quite a swath here from the Alaska Peninsula northward into Bristol Bay, and then wrapping back around that low center. Behind the front, improving, but still areas of marginal VFR and showery conditions extending all the way back to the western Aleutians. And for Anatuvik, looks good. Wide open tomorrow, VFR on either approach. Same forecast for Adigan up there in the Brooks Range. Lake Clark and Merrill, occasionally marginal VFR, lowest on the eastern entrances. Rainy, same forecast, occasionally marginal. Windy, marginal VFR in the southern entrance, otherwise VFR hopefully to the north. Isabel, marginal at times. Mentasta, look for some marginal VFR. Tanita should be VFR, go optimistic here, forecast open pass for that area. And then Portage, again, the lowest conditions on the eastern approach, marginal VFR to IFR in the eastern entrance, could be IFR through the pass as well with marginal VFR on the west side. Chilkoot and White, though, good VFR. And the freezing levels, 2,000 feet, kind of nudged up into the central panhandle areas. And this is for late tonight, early tomorrow morning. And the strong southwesterly flow here, jet stream actually coming up into the southwest Bering Sea and then back down to the northwest. So quite a gradient out here associated with that from at the surface there, just north of the Pribilofs to Cape Newenham, and then 8,000 feet there coming in toward Nikolsky. And looking at the icing threats below 12,000 feet, light to isolated moderate rime all through this area, moving from southwest to northeast and east-northeast, spreading in toward Kodiak Island to the Alaska Range and then back over St. Lawrence Island, and then areas of at lower, more mixed icing below 8,000 feet out to the west. Just some leftover scattered areas here with the moisture of that weakening front coming eastward. And the winds aloft showing that jet stream about 70 knots, but 120 knots, pulling that moisture in that frontal boundary. Systems traveling northeastward here. Another jet max and area of genesis, again, possibly taking place here that'll bring a stronger low center northward, possibly Monday afternoon. And for 9,000 feet, again, low pressure southwest of St. Matthew Island. Strong northwesterlies 35 to 40 knots, 5 knots, southwest 25 to 40 knots. Much lighter here as you go east, just 5 to 15 here for southeast Alaska. And then they pick up there, the eastern Arctic coast east, 25 to 35 knots all along the coastline. Lighter, more variable conditions here over the panhandle with high pressure. And that'll probably last into Monday as well. 3,000 feet, same pattern, high pressure for light wind conditions here for the southeast coast. Good easterlies there along the Arctic coast, portions of the north slope, but really drops off just south of the coastline. So that's really from the coastline northward, those 25 to 35 knot winds. And also 25 to 30 knots here across the southeast Chukchi Sea and through the Bering Strait, and then that kind of merging, bringing that stronger wind condition and the winter weather advisory into St. Lawrence Island, but wrapping around pretty good, 35 to 40 knots with that. Northwesterlies out over the southwest Bering, westerlies over the southern Bering and the central Aleutians, taking a turn to the northeast here across the Pribilofs. And turbulence-wise, with that 6 to 8,000 feet and below of the moderate chop varieties here in the turquoise area, a big chunk of the southwest coast, the Aleutian Range, Alaska Peninsula, all the way out to let's see, that's Amchitka Island, and light to isolated moderate turbulence to Shimia, and also up along the Arctic coast. Look for some occasional moderate chop for the central and east side, lesser turbulence on the west side, and the smooth, looks pretty smooth here across the Brooks Range and through the western half of the state and the southeast coast. No problems at all, turbulence-wise. After the break, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
This is the city office. Ice is jammed about 1 mile downriver and the water is starting to come up. We'll be watching it.
Boy, there's a lot more water this morning, and the ice is really moving.
Seems to be getting a pretty dramatic movement now, and like it's going to make its push to go up.
The river. Giving. Taking. Changing. It provides food. Serves as a highway of water in the summer and an ice road in the winter. A transportation system so people can visit and trade between communities. It provides pleasure and nurtures our spirits with its power and beauty. So we build our homes and communities as close as we can to the banks of the river. And this ensures the river a sellout audience for its greatest show of the year when it floods its banks, its most spectacular time of giving and taking. Every year, some community along the river is flooded. Ice and water damages and destroys property, injures and sometimes takes the lives of people and animals who get in its way. Millions of dollars are spent by the state in disaster relief. Roads, utilities, and community buildings damaged or lost to floodwaters. But with better planning and preparation, communities can help prevent serious damage from the flooding. Ice holds the river captive in the winter. With the coming of spring, the warmth of longer days of sun releases the snow. It turns into water, melting into the river, causing the water to rise, pushing and finally breaking the ice, jamming the river. The water backs up behind the jam, overflows the banks, and creates a flood. Sometimes the melt-off is so quick and so much, water alone can overwhelm the river into a flood without the aid of an ice jam. Different combinations of events beyond even the river's control decide whether your place or someone else's is flooded. Not even the river knows. So the best protection is always be prepared. As breakup approaches, government, schools, health facilities, and communities should get together to review flood plans. This allows everyone to be alerted to the flood danger so you can protect property and lives. Stay informed and be vigilant. Flooding is unpredictable until just a few days before it happens. Be aware it can happen any time until breakup is over. Listen to flooding information on radio and television. Be certain the community knows what to do in case of flooding. Keep children and pets away from culverts, potential flooding areas, and floodwaters. Contact an insurance agent or city official about flood insurance if you don't have it. Because of fewer state dollars, communities need to rely more on their own resources. Don't rely on state disaster relief funds to cover your losses. Before breakup, inspect flood-prone areas to make certain your home and property are not in danger. If they are, prepare them for high water or move them to high ground. Make certain important documents or valuables are also protected or moved out of danger. Shut down power plants and remove batteries from generators. Protect septic systems, wells, and fuel tanks. Shut valves to prevent spilling. Anchor fuel tanks or move them to high ground, disconnecting their manifold pipes to prevent breakage and spills when fuel tanks float.
Yeah, the last time we had a flood in '89, this 25,000-gallon tank here moved around 300-400 feet over by the post office and ended up spilling some fuel all over. So what AKwx has done is put these guy wires in, and they're anchored to a 8-foot dead man, and hopefully even in the highest water they won't move.
Be prepared to do without electricity in case floodwaters damage power systems. Keep charged batteries on hand to power portable tools, appliances, telephones, and radios. Anticipate being cut off for some days. Your airport could flood. Your home or you could be cut off from others by floodwaters. So stock up on food, water, and first aid supplies. Make certain you and your family, as well as others in the community, know where the community shelter is. Make certain backup systems work. Test them as part of your flood preparation. And be aware that others in the community may not be able to help themselves. Help them prepare and be there for them in case it does flood.
It happens a couple of times in my past time, you know. Disabled peoples and the old peoples are just unable to save their things that are in low places because other peoples in the village take care of their properties first before they take care of somebody else's property. It's very hard for elders to save their property in the low places.
And people with serious medical problems and expectant mothers should be moved to the city or a nearby village with a flood-proof airport. There's a lot that can be done to limit flood damage if these things are done. However, even more can be done if communities have long-range flood plans. This kind of planning, however, means thinking of communities differently than in the past. It wasn't long ago that Alaska's people were nomadic, traveling to hunting, fishing, and other food gathering sites with the seasons. Dwellings were temporary and portable, They were placed on the edges of rivers and other large bodies of water because it was more convenient to be near food sources like fish and transportation like a river. Dwellings and gear could be moved quickly if there was flood danger. If property was lost, the cost of replacing it wasn't a lot. Today, homes, property, and community structures cost thousands and sometimes millions of dollars. They are built to be permanent, not to be moved. So a lot of thought and planning needs to be done about where to place buildings. Where to put a building has to be balanced between the convenience of having structures and other valuable property close to river industries and subsistence sites, or risking serious damage or total destruction from floodwaters. Today, communities are investing not only money, but pride in their homes and community. Buildings need to last because they are built for many generations. They are just the beginnings of villages growing into important regional centers. They are part of the cultural heritage of today's children, passed on to tomorrow's.
Welcome back. Well, nothing heavy expected in the way of wind for the southeast coast tomorrow or Monday. For tomorrow, kind of light and variable about sums it up. Northerlies at 10 knots for Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, and even less down to the south to a northwesterly wind at 10. Kind of maybe southeast here along the north coast, but all around 10 knots all the way down. And then on Monday, a little more westerly here, 10 to 15 knots, turning southeast or east-southeast up along the north coast there in the afternoon. And southerlies, lower pressure inland over the Yukon, so 15 to 20 knots for Lynn Canal. That may be the strongest winds you'll see. Otherwise, you can see it gets pretty variable on down to the south over the southern inside waters. And for south central Alaska, for Cook Inlet, northern Cook Inlet, light variable winds at 10 tomorrow. Same thing for Prince William Sound on the North Gulf Coast. And westerlies, 15 to 20 knots here, especially from the Barren Islands down along the east side of Kodiak Island. Light variable winds at 10 for Shelikof Strait. Westerlies at 15 or so for Kamishak Bay, and light winds for the southern part of Cook Inlet. Then on Monday, look for northeast at 10 for northern Cook Inlet, with easterlies at 15 for Prince William Sound. Small craft advisories, southeasterlies increasing during the late afternoon to 30 knots for the North Gulf Coast and into the Barren Islands. 25-knot winds extend right into Kamishak Bay. 25 knots also for Kodiak. And these may evolve into gale force winds Monday evening, depending on the exact track and how strong that next low is that comes up northward during the late afternoon and evening on Monday. For Bristol Bay, southeast 25 tomorrow. Got some southwesterly gales here in the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. A little bit less, but still good for small craft advisories. Southwesterlies here on the Pacific side. South 25 knots there from Sitkinak over to about Sand Point. And for Monday, westerlies 25 knots, southwest 25 on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula. 20 knot southwesterlies there for Bristol Bay. Southwest 25 from Sitkinak over to Chignik, say. And then for the Aleutians, westerlies 35 knots, gales, some of the lighter winds out there, but southwest storm force winds here for the central Aleutians and dropping back to full gales here as that advances eastward across the Nikolsky and then in toward Unalaska. For Monday, still looking at some westerly gales, kind of a west-northwest wind all areas. So I went westerly here for the greater Dutch Harbor area, northwest back to Nikolsky, west-northwest for Adak, all gale force, and then dropping below gale force a little bit there for the areas west of Adak, and then really coming down to 20 knots out here from the west toward those far western zones. And for the southwest coast tomorrow, south of Nunivak Island, southerlies at 30 knots, southeast 30 here for the north coast, and then easterlies. And that's where that winter weather advisory is out for all day tomorrow and probably tomorrow night as well. East 30 knots of the northern Bering Sea, low center tracking right up through this area, so 45 knots, maybe 50 for the Pribilofs with pretty high seas with those winds. And then for Monday, west 40, a good gale there right across the Pribilofs, right out of the west, should make for some good seas there, crashing into Southwest Point, seas at about 18 feet, maybe higher. Southwest 25 knots here for the southwest coast. Southeast there north of Nunivak Island, and easterly gales here, at least to start the day out across St. Lawrence Island, turning north to northwest here back across the northern Bering Sea, more northwesterly west of St. Matthew Island. Up along the Arctic coast, again, brisk wind advisories out everywhere from Wales up to Cape Thompson, and then all along the coastline over to Demarcation Point for easterlies 25 to 30 knots. And then on Monday, more of a northeast direction here for the western Capes down across the southeast Chukchi Sea areas, and then easterlies at 30 knots. Pretty common forecast there for the remainder of the Arctic coast, and especially the eastern Beaufort Sea coastline. And for tonight, we've got a weakening front moving through, but should hold together enough to bring some rain and snow into south central Alaska this evening, changing to snow by midnight, and could pick up 1 to 2 inches in the hillier areas of south central Alaska. Some now rotate northward toward McGrath there in the Kuskokwim Valley. Break through here, and then not too bad. Still some areas of light snow continuing from about the White Mountains north across the Yukon, and some lingering rain or snow showers here, but staying dry for the most part under high pressure over the southeast coast. And then for tomorrow, that low rotates up something like this, the front pushing onto the coast. So look for gale force winds or at least small craft advisories for the southwest coast. Rain or snow, changing toward rain with the warmer air moving into Bristol Bay. And then remnants of that front producing a few scattered rain and snow showers. And this low also adding to the moisture there for the eastern Alaska range. Not too bad over the Panhandle, mostly cloudy, partly to mostly with a risk of a shower. And then this area here is what we're watching to develop and then take a turn to the north. And we'll know more tomorrow on the exact strength and exact track of that low to determine how much wind will come into south central Alaska. And that's a look at tonight's weather. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.